I still remember the exact moment Daniel called me. His voice was shaking, but in the best way possible. "I got it. I got the promotion," he said, barely able to breathe. And God, my heart nearly burst with happiness. We'd been waiting for this, hoping, praying, dreaming about it together. That night, we popped open a bottle of wine, toasted to his success, to our future, and everything felt so right, so solid, so safe. But it didn't stay that way for long. At first, I told myself it was just the stress of the new role. You know, bigger responsibilities, longer hours, nothing unusual, or so I thought. But then his phone, it was suddenly always in his hand, always flipped face down, late-night texts, whispered calls, and the silence. Oh, the silence that used to be filled with laughter, stories, little moments that made us us. Now, it was like living with a stranger. I kept trying to quiet that uneasy voice in my head. "It's the pressure," I told myself. "He just needs time to adjust." But something felt off, colder, distant, like the man I married had started fading right in front of me, one invisible piece at a time. And no matter how hard I tried to reach for him, it felt like my hands just kept closing around empty air. I started noticing the little things first, things that, on their own, didn't scream anything. But together, they started painting a picture I wasn't ready to see. The way he'd suddenly pull his phone away when I walked into the room. How he'd avoid eye contact when I asked simple questions like, "How was your day?" Or how his answers turned into one-word sentences, like I was some coworker, not his wife. Nights became the hardest. I'd lie there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft glow of his phone lighting up the room, while he typed away, completely disconnected from me. I'd turn over, pretending to sleep, wondering if it was just me. Maybe I was being dramatic. Maybe I was overthinking, right? But deep down, something didn't feel right. It felt heavy. It felt wrong. And the hardest part? He wasn't cruel. He wasn't yelling or slamming doors. No, it was worse than that. It was the kind of quiet that feels like being slowly erased, like I was disappearing from his world, piece by piece, while he stood right there, pretending not to notice. I kept telling myself it was just a phase, just the job, just stress. But my gut was screaming something else entirely. God knows I tried to hold it together. I started doing everything I could to make things easier for him, cooking his favorite meals, leaving little notes in his briefcase like I used to, even pretending not to notice when he ignored them. I was desperate to believe this was just a rough patch, that the man I married was still in there somewhere. But with every passing day, it felt like I was loving someone who had already let go of me. There were moments, fleeting, hollow moments, when he'd flash a smile or kiss me on the forehead, like muscle memory. But it didn't feel real. It felt robotic, like he was playing the role of good husband, just well enough to keep me from asking the wrong questions. And the more he pulled away, the more I felt this aching knot in my chest tighten, this suffocating feeling that something was slipping through my fingers, and I couldn't stop it. And yet, a part of me still clung to hope. Because that's what you do when you've built a life with someone, right? You fight for it. You believe in them, even when they give you every reason not to. But deep down, a whisper had started, quiet at first, but getting louder. Something's not right, and you know it. And as much as I wanted to silence it, I couldn't, not anymore. At first I told myself I was being paranoid, that maybe, just maybe, my mind was playing tricks on me. But then came the phone calls, specifically, her calls, Vanessa, his boss. Every time her name popped up on his screen, Daniel's whole body would stiffen. His tone would change, softer, lighter, almost playful. And the laughter. God, the laughter, like some private joke only the two of them shared. And I couldn't unsee it, the way she acted during that promotion dinner. She was overly attentive, her hand lingering just a second too long on his shoulder, That overly familiar way she said his name, like they were more than just colleagues. I remember feeling this uncomfortable knot in my stomach that night, but I pushed it down. I told myself I was being insecure, foolish even. But now, that memory hit differently, much differently. Still, I tried to brush it off. I wanted to believe it was nothing, that I was overthinking, overanalyzing, reading into things that weren't there. But then, one ordinary day, I was doing something as simple as laundry. And that's when I found it, tucked inside the pocket of his jacket, a receipt, a hotel receipt, a luxury hotel. On a day he told me he was away for a business conference, and in that instant, my whole world shifted. I just stood there, staring at that receipt like it had physically slapped me. My hands started shaking. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear anything else. I kept reading it over and over, hoping, praying that I was wrong, that maybe it wasn't his. Maybe it was old. Maybe it was a mistake. But deep down, I knew better. I knew exactly what it meant. I just wasn't ready to admit it. The dates matched, perfectly lined up with that so-called conference he mentioned, the one he was conveniently vague about. I racked my brain, replaying every conversation from that week, every excuse, every late-night phone call. It all started to connect, like pieces of a puzzle I never wanted to solve. And there was one name that kept flashing through my mind like a neon sign. Vanessa. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But mostly, I just stood there, frozen, feeling this wave of dread wash over me, heavier than anything I've ever felt. Because this wasn't just some random mistake. This wasn't just a stupid lapse in judgment. No, this was deliberate, planned, hidden, and everything in me suddenly knew. It wasn't just the job that came with that promotion, it was her. I sat on the edge of the bed, gripping that tiny piece of paper like it held the answer to every lie he'd ever told me. My mind was racing, flipping back through every little moment I'd ignored. The late nights, the sudden weekend, projects. The way he started dressing sharper, checking his reflection just a little longer before leaving for work. It all made sense now, in the worst possible way. But what shattered me wasn't just the betrayal, it was who it was with. Vanessa, his boss. The woman who handed him that promotion, smiled in my face over dinner, laughed at our table like we were old friends. I felt humiliated, like the biggest fool in the world. While I was sitting at home believing in him, trusting him, they were out there, living some secret life built on lies, on my life. And as much as it broke me, something else started brewing beneath the pain. A slow, simmering rage, the kind that bubbles quietly, almost cold. Because if they thought I was going to sit back, stay quiet, and pretend I didn't see it, they were about to learn exactly who they were messing with. I didn't have a plan yet. But one thing was certain. I was done ignoring the signs. I wish I could say I hesitated, that I gave him the benefit of the doubt. But no, something inside me had snapped. I wasn't the clueless, trusting wife anymore. I was a woman on a mission. So I started digging. Quietly, carefully, phone records, credit card statements, every little breadcrumb he thought he swept under the rug, I was now hunting for. And let me tell you, once you start looking, the truth comes at you fast. Calls at strange hours, charges to restaurants we'd never been to together, hotel bookings, spa services, even flowers, sent to an address that wasn't ours. Every click, every scroll, every document felt like a punch to the gut. But I kept going. I had to. I needed to know everything. The final blow came when I reached out to a mutual friend, someone from Daniel's office. I played it cool, casual, like I was just making small talk. But the moment she said, "Oh, I thought you knew," my heart just stopped. And that's when it all unraveled. The affair, the meetings that were never meetings, the business trips that were anything but. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was real. It was happening. and it was with her. I couldn't breathe. I swear. For a moment, it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. My hands were trembling, my chest was tight, and my heart was pounding so hard it echoed in my ears. It was one thing to suspect, to wonder. But hearing it out loud, having every terrible fear confirmed, it felt like something inside me just shattered into pieces. And then came the worst part, the timeline. As I pieced it together, my stomach turned. The dates lined up perfectly. Right before his promotion, right when Vanessa started showing up in every conversation. That's when it began. I sat there, staring at my notes, realizing that this wasn't just some affair that happened after. No, that promotion, it had a price. And that price was me. It wasn't just betrayal. It wasn't just infidelity. This was humiliation on a whole different level. Professional, personal, intimate, all wrapped together in one sickening package. While I stood there, celebrating him, believing in him, raising my glass to his so-called success, they were already lying, already cheating, already building a future that didn't include me. The rage that surged through me was unlike anything I'd ever felt. And in that moment, one thing became painfully, terrifyingly clear. This wasn't just about heartbreak anymore. This was war. I sat there, staring at everything I had collected, the screenshots, the receipts, the call logs. It felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. But no, this was mine, my life, my marriage. And suddenly, everything, every smile, every kiss, every I love you, felt like a lie. A carefully crafted performance to keep me in the dark while he built a secret life with her. I kept asking myself, how long? How long was I living next to someone who looked me in the eyes and lied? And the cruelest part? He probably never thought I'd figure it out. He probably assumed I'd stay oblivious, the supportive wife, too naive, too trusting to ever put the pieces together. But, oh, he underestimated me, badly. And as I sat there, wiping the tears off my face, something inside me shifted. The heartbreak was still there, raw, suffocating. But beneath it, something colder started to rise, steadier, stronger. Enough. Enough with the lies. Enough with the humiliation. If he thought he was walking away from this unscathed, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. I didn't confront him right away. No, that would have been too easy. Too expected. Instead, I did what he never imagined I'd do. I got methodical, strategic. I gathered every scrap of evidence, organized it like a case file, photos, text logs, hotel receipts, voicemails I managed to overhear. I wasn't just preparing for a fight, I was preparing to end it. On my terms. Every time he walked through that door, pretending everything was normal, pretending we were normal, I felt this cold, electric buzz under my skin. Part rage, part heartbreak, part adrenaline. I'd watch him go through the motions, kiss my cheek, ask about my day, like nothing was wrong. And I'd smile. I'd smile knowing the clock was ticking, and he didn't even hear it. I rehearsed it in my head over and over. What I'd say, how I'd say it, how I wouldn't cry, how I wouldn't scream. No. He didn't deserve my tears. He deserved the truth, served cold, direct, undeniable. And when the moment finally came, when that front door clicked open that night, I was ready. He walked in like it was any other night, loosened his tie, dropped his keys on the counter, mumbled something about a long day. I stood there watching him, wondering how someone could lie so effortlessly, how he could look me in the eye, knowing everything he'd done, and still pretend. It was almost impressive. Almost. Sit down, I told him. Calm, firm, no anger in my voice, just this razor-sharp clarity. His eyebrows knitted together, confused, maybe even slightly annoyed. Why? What's going on? He asked. And that's when I dropped the first photo on the table, then the second, then the third. His face? God. I'll never forget it. The way the color drained out of him like someone had pulled the plug. He stammered, fumbled. His hands trembled as he tried to come up with something. Anything. But the words wouldn't come. Because what do you say when there's no way out? When every lie, every excuse, every pathetic little story is laid bare, right there, staring back at you? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. The silence, my silence, said it all. I took a deep breath, steady, controlled. Then I looked him dead in the eyes and said it. Your promotion came with a price, and it cost you your marriage. His mouth opened, then closed, like a fish gasping for air. He tried, to spin it. It didn't mean anything. It was complicated. You don't understand. But I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. I was done listening to lies. I slid the envelope across the table. Divorce papers. Neat. Final. His hands hovered over it like it was on fire. His lips quivered. Isabel. Wait. Let's just talk about this, he stuttered, desperate, pathetic. But there was no talking left, no explanations, no excuses. He made his choices. He wrote this ending. I was just signing it. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt something I hadn't felt in so long. Free. Completely, entirely free. I stood up, looked at the man I no longer recognized, and said the only thing left to say, you can leave now. And as he packed his things, fumbling, broken, a shadow of the man who once thought he had it all, I realized I wasn't broken. I was finally waking up. The days that followed were strange. Quiet, but not the suffocating kind of quiet I'd felt before. No, this was different. This was the kind of quiet that feels like breathing fresh air after holding it for too long. I started peeling back the layers of my own life, the parts I had neglected, the parts I had dimmed to keep someone else comfortable. And for the first time in a long time, it was about me. I didn't waste time letting him control the narrative. Oh no, I made sure everyone, family, friends, anyone who mattered, knew the truth. Not his version, the real one. Before he could twist it, spin it, play the victim, I shut it down. Completely. And you know what? Watching people's faces shift from pity to outrage, it was oddly healing. But the real shift, the real promotion, wasn't about them. It was about me. I started therapy. I booked that trip I always talked about but never dared to take. I poured my energy into projects I'd been putting on hold for years. Little by little, day by day, I started building a life that felt mine, not ours, not his. Mine, and God. It felt so damn good. And while I was out there, rediscovering myself, the fallout started. Oh, it started fast. Whispers turned into rumors. Rumors turned into full-blown office gossip. It didn't take long for people at his job to connect the dots. The luxury hotel receipts, the suspiciously fast promotion, the late-night meetings. It was all out in the open now. And guess what? Turns out, when you mix betrayal with professional misconduct, it tends to blow up spectacularly. I heard through the grapevine that Vanessa wasn't handling the heat very well. Neither was Daniel. Meetings behind closed doors, HR investigations, awkward stares in hallways, people suddenly remembering all those little moments that seemed innocent, until they weren't. Oh, how quickly admiration turns into judgment when the mask slips. But me? I was done watching, done worrying. Their mess wasn't my burden anymore. I wasn't sitting in the shadows, waiting for updates, hoping for karma to do her job. No, I was busy. Living. I'd wake up, brew my coffee, open my windows, and let the sunlight pour in. And every time I caught my reflection, in the mirror, in shop windows, Even in the rear view, I barely recognized her. Not because she was broken, but because she was finally free. I still remember the first night in my new apartment. It wasn't anything extravagant, just mine. Simple, clean, peaceful. I sat on the floor, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, holding a warm cup of coffee. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I smiled. Not the kind of smile you force, not the polite kind. A real one, honest, full, mine. As I looked around, at my own space, my own life, something clicked. You traded me for a promotion, I whispered to myself, shaking my head with the smallest laugh. And I traded you for freedom. And between us, I got the better deal. By far. Because here's the thing about being broken. Sometimes it's just the beginning of being rebuilt into something stronger, wiser, untouchable. And as I stood there, looking at that woman in the mirror, I realized something. I was never the one who lost. He was. And he'll spend the rest of his life figuring that out, long after I've moved on.